The entire executive dining room fell silent as the elegant CEO smiled coldly, ripped the stranger's business card into tiny pieces, and let them drift across the polished table like confetti. Several executives laughed. Someone quietly recorded the humiliating moment on a phone. The man simply gathered his untouched lunch tray, thanked the waitress for her kindness, and walked away without raising his voice. No one imagined that before the sun set, he would quietly purchase the company supplying nearly every critical material her billion-dollar business depended on, leaving the woman who mocked him facing the greatest crisis of her career. If you believe kindness is never weakness, that forgiveness is stronger than revenge, and that everyone deserves a second chance, please like this video, leave a comment, share this story with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so our community can continue sharing inspiring journeys like this one. Rowan Mercer had never cared much about appearances. At 52, he still preferred simple jackets, worn leather shoes, and an old pickup that had survived hundreds of thousands of miles. Years earlier he had built one of the country's most respected industrial logistics companies before quietly selling most of it and dedicating his time to mentoring struggling entrepreneurs. His wealth was immense, but almost nobody recognized him anymore because he avoided interviews, social media, and glamorous business events. The only thing he valued more than success was humility, believing that respect should never depend on expensive clothing or famous names. Across town, 38-year-old CEO Celeste Hawthorne had become the youngest executive ever to lead the manufacturing empire founded by her grandfather. Brilliant, ambitious, and fearless, she had rescued the company from years of declining profits. Investors adored her confidence, financial magazines celebrated her bold decisions, and competitors feared her relentless determination. Yet somewhere along the climb to the top, confidence had slowly hardened into pride. She had begun measuring people by their appearance, assuming expensive suits revealed intelligence while ordinary clothes revealed failure. That afternoon Celeste attended a private luncheon organized by business leaders hoping to encourage new partnerships. Rowan accepted an invitation from an old colleague who believed the two exceptional executives might enjoy exchanging ideas. Rowan arrived early, carrying nothing more than a notebook and a neatly printed business card. When introductions finally began, several guests looked past Rowan without interest. Celeste barely glanced at him before returning her attention to wealthier-looking executives. During the meal Rowan politely suggested a conversation about improving domestic supply chains and protecting small manufacturers from unpredictable shortages. His ideas were thoughtful, practical, and years ahead of current industry trends, but Celeste never truly listened. She assumed he was another consultant seeking attention. Near the end of lunch Rowan quietly handed her his card, explaining that if she ever wished to discuss long-term supplier stability, he would be happy to help. Without even reading the name, Celeste smiled dismissively, tore the card into pieces, and remarked loudly that serious companies preferred serious partners. Laughter echoed around the table. Rowan simply nodded, thanked everyone for the meal, wished them continued success, and walked away. The restaurant manager hurried after him, embarrassed by what had happened. Rowan only smiled gently and assured the man that no apology was necessary. He believed every person eventually met the consequences of their own choices without anyone else needing to create them. As Rowan drove away beneath the bright afternoon sun, he made one phone call to his legal team. Months earlier he had quietly begun negotiations to purchase Northbridge Components, the specialized supplier responsible for producing the precision materials that powered nearly 70% of Celeste's manufacturing lines. The acquisition had already been under review because Rowan admired the family-owned Supplier and wanted to preserve its independence from aggressive investment firms. The events at lunch changed only one thing. He instructed his team to finalize the agreement immediately. By mid-afternoon, contracts were signed, nothing illegal occurred. Nothing unethical happened. Rowan simply became the new owner of a supplier free to choose which customers best aligned with its long-term values. The next morning, under bright skies and clear sunshine, Celeste walked confidently into headquarters expecting another profitable day. Instead she found anxious department heads waiting outside her office. Northbridge Components had announced a comprehensive review of all customer contracts following its acquisition. New supply agreements would prioritize companies demonstrating collaborative partnerships, ethical purchasing practices, and long-term operational stability. At first Celeste remained calm. She assumed her company's size guaranteed approval. 3 days later, another daytime meeting shattered that confidence. Northbridge declined to renew several priority contracts, including hers. Production schedules immediately slowed. Investors demanded explanations. Customers feared delays. Competitors sensed weakness. Financial analysts who had once praised her suddenly questioned whether her leadership style had damaged valuable relationships. Celeste spent long hours reviewing reports until one detail caught her attention: the new owner, Rowan Mercer. Her heart sank as she remembered the torn business cards scattered across the restaurant table. For the first time in years, success offered no easy solution. She requested a meeting, expecting Rowan either to celebrate his revenge or reject her entirely. Instead, his assistant scheduled an afternoon appointment. When Celeste arrived at Northbridge headquarters, she was surprised by its atmosphere. Employees smiled genuinely. Factory workers greeted executives by name. Suggestion boards displayed ideas submitted by machinists, receptionists, and engineers alike. Awards celebrated teamwork instead of individual executives. It felt less like a corporation and more like a community. Rowan welcomed her personally with calm professionalism. He offered coffee, asked whether her drive had been comfortable, and thanked her for making the trip. His kindness somehow made the memory of her behavior feel even heavier. Before business began, Rowan walked her through the manufacturing floor. He introduced technicians who had spent decades perfecting tiny details invisible to customers but essential to product quality. He proudly described employees who had started as apprentices and eventually become department leaders. Every introduction emphasized loyalty, respect, and opportunity. Gradually Celeste understood something she had overlooked for years: successful companies were not built by impressive CEOs alone, they were built by ordinary people who wanted to feel valued. When they finally sat together, Rowan explained his decision without bitterness. He told her that contracts represented trust as much as profit. He invested only in partnerships where mutual respect existed because disrespect eventually spread through entire organizations. His company had every legal right to select customers aligned with those principles. Celeste wanted to argue. Instead she found herself admitting the painful truth: she had judged him within seconds, she had humiliated a stranger publicly, she had become the kind of leader her grandfather had always warned her never to become. The silence that followed was heavier than any accusation. For days afterward Celeste couldn't stop thinking about the visit. She walked through her own factories seeing things differently. Employees avoided eye contact. Managers rarely listened to frontline workers. Customer complaints received scripted responses instead of genuine attention. Turnover rates were quietly rising. The supply crisis had not created these problems. It had exposed them. Determined to change, Celeste cancelled unnecessary executive events and spent every afternoon visiting production lines. She asked employees what prevented them from doing their best work. She listened instead of defending herself. Broken equipment was repaired. Outdated safety concerns were addressed. Employee training expanded. Recognition programs rewarded collaboration instead of competition. Some workers doubted the changes would last, others cautiously believed. Months passed under bright mornings and busy afternoons. Gradually morale improved. Productivity increased. Customer satisfaction climbed. Investors noticed healthier long-term performance despite temporary financial setbacks. One afternoon an elderly maintenance technician approached Celeste with tears in his eyes after receiving recognition for 30 years of service. He quietly admitted that nobody had ever thanked him personally before. That single moment affected Celeste more deeply than any quarterly profit report. Meanwhile Rowan observed the transformation from a distance. He heard positive reports from suppliers, trucking companies, and even local businesses that interacted with Celeste's employees. The change appeared genuine rather than temporary public relations. Nearly a year after the humiliating luncheon, another business conference invited both executives to speak about leadership. This time there was no private dining room filled with laughter, there was only a crowded auditorium filled with entrepreneurs hoping to learn. Celeste walked onto the stage carrying something in her hand: a freshly printed business card. She publicly described the worst mistake of her professional life, admitting that arrogance had nearly destroyed everything she loved. She confessed that tearing apart a stranger's business card had actually revealed how fragmented her own character had become. Looking toward Rowan, she thanked him for choosing integrity over humiliation. He could have mocked her publicly, but instead he allowed consequences to teach what revenge never could. The audience remained silent. Moved by her honesty, Rowan stood and accepted the business card with a warm smile before shaking her hand. The applause lasted several minutes. After the conference, Northbridge announced a new supplier agreement with Celeste's company. The partnership was smaller than before and required strict standards of employee care, ethical purchasing, and transparent communication, but it represented something far more valuable than business. It represented restored trust. Together the two companies later launched apprenticeship programs helping unemployed workers learn skilled trades. Hundreds of families found stable careers because two leaders had discovered that humility could build opportunities pride never could. Years later, people rarely remembered the financial crisis that once threatened Celeste's company. They remembered the transformation instead. Young executives studied her leadership because she openly taught future business owners that intelligence without kindness eventually becomes weakness, while kindness guided by wisdom creates strength that lasts for generations. Before we finish, we'd love to hear from you. What do you think was the biggest lesson in this story? Was it that respect should never depend on appearances, that humility is the foundation of true leadership, or that forgiveness can change lives? Leave your meaningful comment below because your perspective may encourage someone else who is facing a difficult season. As another bright afternoon sun stretched across the city skyline, Rowan and Celeste stood outside a newly opened training center watching young apprentices walk through its doors with hopeful smiles. Neither spoke about the painful lunch where everything had begun. That moment no longer defined either of them. One had refused to let humiliation become hatred. The other had refused to let failure become the end of her story. Together they proved that real success is measured not by how many people we can impress, but by how many lives become better because we chose compassion over pride, grace over revenge, and hope over regret. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. Remember, every act of kindness you choose today may become the second chance someone else has been praying for.